Today we're looking at 10 things we've learned from the opening weekend of Premier League football. We have got so much to go through. Pretty much every team is going to be covered in this video, including United's goalkeeping issues, Arsenal and Gyökeres. We've got Tijani Reinders in there, Richarlison, that 1 metre free kick nonsense, Liverpool in the centre-backs, Newcastle's midfield. There's loads to get into. Let's crack on. Before we get into this though, get your coffee or your tea in hand, have a little relax, and put in the comments below one thing you've learnt from the opening weekend. I'm going to go through each comment. I'm going to be reviewing your statements, agreeing with them, disagreeing with them, because generally, your guys' opinions stink. Alright, like I said, this is episode 1 of this series. I haven't got a name for it either, so if you can think of a good one, let me know in the comments below. But let's keep this pretty conversational. Let's start with Tijani Reinders. And there's a serious question mark here. Is this one of the greatest debuts in Premier League history? From a midfielder anyway. You know, we've seen forwards score goals, score hat-tricks, score doubles. But as a midfielder, from an all-round impact point of view and proving what he can do in multi-facets of the game, I think this is up there. Pep Guardiola after the game talked about how he was able to pick the ball up in deep lying positions and as a defensive midfielder progress it through his ball carrying ability. But it wasn't just his ball carrying ability, was it? It was his composure and calmness in possession. It was his quality and decision making in the final third. It was his willingness to run and get in behind opponents. All round, he looks absolutely terrifying. Let's take, for instance, the first goal, which he totally orchestrates, beats 3 men in the midfield. The clipped ball over the top to Rico Lewis is an absolute delight off of his right foot. The weight is perfect. The timing is absolutely sensational. It's ridiculous. Then the second goal. A totally different style of Reinders' game, able to get in behind, open his legs, use his physicality, finish off his left foot, proving that ambidextrous nature of his game. Because I feel like it's really flown under the radar, to be honest with you. This is a player who scored 15 goals in Serie A last season. He is not just a deep-line playmaker that can push the ball forward, use his physicality to beat people up. He can get on the end of things, run in behind, score goals. It no doubt reminded people a little bit of an early days İlkay Gündoğan, but I feel like he's got slightly more physicality to his game than Gündoğan, who wanted to pop up late and arrive late in the box. In my opinion, really laid down a marker for Manchester City. Because yes, Rodri is going to miss a significant part this season. It might only be 8 weeks at the start of the campaign, but I do feel that ACL will probably have knock-on effects throughout the season. However, when you've got Reinders in there, whoever you pair with him doesn't have to do as much because Reinders' game is so well-rounded. He covered the most ground of any player on the field as well, and it's not a luxury midfielder that you're going to see some teams operate with this season. It's a player that is willing to do the doggedness going backwards as well. And we haven't yet seen him paired with Rodri, but the spine of the team, City are able to put out early doors, opening day, and potentially at points this season, Diaz, Stones, Rodri, Reinders, Haaland. That might be the best spine of a team in the league. Now, I think the early doors concerns about City were how well are all these new signings going to gel. But if you've got a spine like that is very settled, and with a player like Reinders who comes in and hits the ground running immediately day one, the other players in the team who are being bedded in, be that Arayan Cherki or Omar Mamouche still coming into this side, they don't have to look as good as quickly because the team is so solid back to front. Tijani Reinders' transfer fee at the end of this summer will look like the biggest bargain in the league. Where should we go next? Let's talk about Richarlison, shall we? Because I feel like Tottenham have made very positive moves under Thomas Frank tactically. And Richarlison has sort of spearheaded those tactical changes. I think he is a bit of an enigma, Richarlison. His injury record, particularly last season, very, very checkered. I think it was 4 or 5 Premier League starts. Not good enough. But when he is able to get on the field, he is just a nuisance, isn't he? He's a nightmare to deal with. He's very unorthodox in his body movements, in his style. He's aggressive. It feels like he's going to tread on your toes. I mean, he's actually scored 13 goals in his last 16 Premier League starts. That's a stat that really blew me away because I just don't associate him with scoring goals recently. And I think that's probably down to the fact he doesn't start a lot of games and hasn't last season. But it's 9 in his last 9 starts at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So he is having an effect, and certainly on the weekend, you saw a much more confident Richarlison. And when you see a confident Richarlison, some of the finishing will take you by surprise. Obviously, everybody's going to talk about that second goal. It's Brazilian Richarlison. It's the trademark Richarlison finish we saw at the World Cup. The guy has the ability to do that, to pull off wonderful volleys, acrobatic volleys. But I want to talk about the first goal. The first goal reminded me, obviously you guys are going to hammer me for this, it reminded me of a Harry Kane finish. Taking it at an awkward height, on the bounce, behind him, guiding it into the corner, didn't need to put his foot through it. It's a really cultured finish, and it's not something I typically associate with Richarlison, who can snatch at chances. And whilst we're really positive about his finishing and his goal-scoring exploits so far under Thomas Frank, I think what you also got to take into account with Richarlison is he's actually an excellent outball. He runs the channels really hard. He makes it difficult for the centre-backs who are going to play up against him when he's on form. And now it's a battle. It is a battle between him and Dominic Solanke for that number 9 shirt. And I think at the start of the season, everybody would have said Dominic Solanke nailed on every time. But Richarlison has started so well under Thomas Frank that I think they're going to have to share some minutes. And that's not a bad thing, because Spurs could theoretically play 60 games this season. They're going to have to distribute those minutes because neither striker has the best injury record. But Richarlison, yeah, he's proven to me that he can really lead this line for Thomas Frank. And I think he's proven to Frank that case too. Whilst we're on the topic of Spurs, we can't not talk about Mo Kudus as well. I mean, this guy's ridiculous. Yes, he had a down season last year, as did pretty much everyone at West Ham, but he is one of the funnest players in the league to watch. Talk about his end product all you want. Talk about his final ball and his finishing. Well, he put up 2 assists on the weekend, and if that does continue, he'll have very little drawback to his game, because playing on that right in 1v1 situations, you're dead, because he has the flair and the inert ability to get people off their seats, and there's not enough of that in the Premier League. Kudus just has something to his game that is exciting. He's so physically strong as well. It's impossible to knock him off the ball. I think this is, again, I spoke about Reinders being one of the bargains of the summer. I think Kudus is one of the signings of the summer too. I really do. I think he's going to have an exceptional season for Spurs, who've actually recruited really well. We're going to talk about Eberechi Eze a little bit later. It looks like he's going to be linking up. The thought of Eze and Kudus in the same lineup is just mouth-watering. Kudus' link-up play with Porro in this game alone has huge positive upsides. Yeah, all round, I think things look really good at Spurs. It seems like there's positive momentum going into the season. I think Thomas Frank is getting it right tactically. His ability to shift game to game, back 4s, back 5s, midfield 2s, midfield 3s, Pat Matasar, his improvement. I think there's so much to be positive about. Next, I want to talk about something that's just annoyed me. It's this rubbish rule that we need to stamp out. The 1 metre rule towards the wall. Apparently it's been in place since 2019. I've got the exact wording here. I'm going to read this out to you. Where 3 or more defending team players form a wall, all attacking team players must remain at least 1 metre from the wall until the ball is in play. What a load of rubbish. The fact that this Eze goal was chalked off actually boiled my blood on Sunday. Yes, by the rules. If you're a stickler for the rules, it is the correct decision. But should it be a rule? Should it be the correct decision? Because if you go back and watch the last 20 direct free kick goals in the Premier League, tell me, please God, tell me how many of them breach this rule. Every single one. Every single free kick goal, direct free kick goal in the Premier League last season had a player encroaching on the 1 metre zone. It is absolute nonsense. It was not enforced properly last year. They've now laid a marker down in the opening weekend of the season that this has to be enforced. So we're now going to see over the next 6-8 weeks, maybe even the full campaign, this absolute nonsense of players getting too close to the walls, free kicks being delayed, free kicks being retaken, goals being chalked off. It is rubbish, over-refereeing nonsense. I feel bad for Eberechi Eze. This is the 2nd season in a row he's had a direct free kick on opening weekend ruled out pathetically, quite frankly. It was rubbish against Brentford. It was rubbish against Chelsea. I'm just not having it. I'm just not having we have to be sticklers for every rule to the letter. Was Gahey really interfering that badly with the wall in this situation? Not for me. He wasn't rugby tackling somebody out of the way. There was contact with the defender. The defender was making contact with him. The goalkeeping was really poor. Chelsea fans, I'm sure, I guarantee in the comments below will be saying, he shouldn't have been interfering with the ball. The rules are the rules. Oh, well, if that is the rule, it's a world I don't want to live in. If we start chalking goals off like that, we may as well phone it in. Honestly, it's rubbish. Whilst we're on the topic of this game, let's quickly talk about it, shall we? Because I think Chelsea looked a little undercooked, rightly so, because of course they haven't had the pre-season of other sides. They're coming off an excellent Club World Cup win. They are going to be a little bit more tired. They are going to be a little bit more underprepared. But it was a little bit disappointed with how they built up from the back. I don't think the attack quite functioned as it will later in the season. Nothing too much to worry about. But Crystal Palace really should have won this game. And I think it is important we talk about Eberechi Eze, because that felt like a goodbye at the end. For me, he's still Crystal Palace's best player. He's the talisman in this game. He got 6 shots off. He was dominating the midfield space. His ability to carry the ball is sensational. And I am a little bit worried for Crystal Palace if he leaves. I don't think they've had a good summer at all. Ollie Glasner has spoken publicly about not having enough players through the door, not being happy with the club's business so far this summer. Totally fair enough. They haven't brought enough players in at all, have they? And if Eberechi Eze goes, I would be really worried. I think the fee he's potentially going for to Tottenham, £55 million, is amazing value. Kudus and Eze for a combined 110 mil. It's cheap as chips. I mean, Eze had a £68 million buyout clause that was active 2 days ago. I thought that if that was to expire, Palace would be asking for more money. But apparently they're asking for less. That surprises me. I think the full-time scenes of Ollie Glasner going over to Mark Gahey and sort of them having a little bit of a confrontation, it appeared like on camera, wasn't a great look. Overall, I think Glasner is one of the best managers in the league. I really think his tactical blueprint, his managerial style, his communication is Champions League level. It is truly elite. But it feels like at the moment he's having his legs taken out from under him a little bit. Gahey might well end up going. He'll probably stay, but it won't be the prettiest. Eze's going to go. And if you take those 2 players out of the side, that's a worry. Let's roll the clock back to Friday night, and I think it's pretty clear. Liverpool still need defensive reinforcements. I don't think the balance is quite right there. Liverpool fans, let me know what you think. Why is the balance not quite right there? Is it the fact that Gravenberch is missing? Is it the 2 new fullbacks? But overall, it felt far too easy, as we've seen in pre-season, as we saw in the Community Shield. It felt far too easy to break on that defence. The transitions were way too open. Slot spoke about after the game controlling 8 out of 10 phases, but not controlling all 10. I don't feel like they controlled all 8, if I'm honest. I think there's definitely a slight issue with the balance of the fullbacks. Frimpong wants to push right up the pitch and support Salah, but in the press, it doesn't feel quite right, because obviously Salah kind of cheats playing out wide right. And it didn't quite have the effectiveness we saw last season with Frimpong trying to press high as well. When that happens, obviously they shuttle into this sort of back 3 and Kirkes pushes across, but I don't necessarily think that suits his game either. He wants to be very aggressive. He wants to fly forward. He's a front foot defender. He's very, very strong in the challenge. And when he pushes up too, it does leave Van Dijk and Konate quite exposed. Van Dijk's 34 now. You know, he's averaged 36 appearances across the last 4 seasons. It's a lot of football. He's not as fast as he once was. He needs the cover of Konate, and Konate's injury record is pretty checkered. You know, last season was the first time since 2018 he's put up over 17 domestic league starts. So if you're asking them to do this for a full campaign, I think there will be a slight struggle. Leone is coming in. He is a huge physical presence at 6'5". He dwarfs a lot of the Liverpool backline, but it's a big ask. I think it's a big ask. If one of those two get injured, I am a little bit concerned about the Liverpool backline. Fortunately for them, they can just blow anyone away. They can just blow anyone away. The front line's a joke. I don't see a world in which they don't score 2 goals a game. You know, they could win games 4-3 a lot this season. And whilst all the talk this summer has been about Florian Wirtz and the arrival of Isak potentially, Mo Salah having another very solid season, Ekitike has impressed me the most. It's his ability to drop deep and like pick the ball up, flicks around the corner, so calm and casual, but has a real burst of pace when he needs to get going. His finish is inerring. I think he could be a problem this season, Ekitike. It wouldn't surprise me at all if we saw Hugo Ekitike put up 20 Premier League goals. If they don't get Isak over the line, I honestly wouldn't be that worried. I think they do need forwards. I think they need forward depth. I'm not saying they don't need signings. They definitely need a left winger to support Gakpo as well. But if they didn't get Isak over the line, and instead they got a couple of sort of £50 million forwards, there's an argument to be made that's the right decision, honestly. I think Ugo Ekitike could comfortably lead this line for 38 games this season. Moving on to one of the more boring games of the weekend. To be honest with you, it was 0-0, Aston Villa versus Newcastle. But I do think we learned that even without Isak, Newcastle have one of the best coaches in the league. Eddie Howe is a master at setting up a side in different phases, be it the 4-5-1 out of possession when they're a bit deeper, or the 4-3-3 when they're pressing. The press is the best in the league, I think. It's so well structured. There's so little time to breathe. Even when they didn't have a number 9, it was Gordon up there, Barnes on the left and Elanga on the right. The way those three pressed with the midfield in behind them is a masterpiece. I think it's actually flown under the radar that they limited Villa at home, a weak Villa, who weren't at their best, and obviously were down to 10 men for a large portion of the game, to just 3 shots. I don't feel like Villa ever got a foothold in this game, because whenever they were at the back trying to play out, they were just suffocated to all hell. The goalkeeper attempted 14 long passes, he completed just 3 of them, but I think it was the all-round structure of Newcastle's midfield that impressed me the most. Joe Linton, Tonali and Bruno G, the balance is just gorgeous. I think the addition of Jacob Ramsey coming in there to have running power, to add goals from midfield, he can also play wide on the left, is actually a genius addition. I think 40 million quid is perfect. He's like the perfect midfield addition here to this Newcastle unit, who need to add a little bit more attacking threat from that midfield. But also Elanga's work rate off the ball was excellent. Gordon continues to amaze me. I don't think, despite the fact we've seen it for the 21s with England, and we saw it at the weekend, he is going to play a continued amount of minutes in that number 9 role. Yes, he can do it, but I think you take away a lot of his best stuff on the left. I actually think Newcastle tactically are so good that even if it's not Isak, and it is Visser leading the line, because, you know, Newcastle want this high-profile name, and obviously people talk about Visser being not the starting man. He's coming in to replace Wilson. They want a Sesko. They want a Gonçalo Ramos. Well, let's just relax. I think if Visser leads the line as a number 9 this season, Newcastle will compete for the Champions League. He scored 19 non-penalty goals in the Premier League last campaign, playing as the number 9 for Brentford. He is exceptional out of possession as a presser, really good finisher, knows the league. I don't necessarily even think Newcastle need this superstar lights out number 9, because the system is honestly so good. It's so well coached. And I know they want the shiny new toy, they want the superstar name. If that doesn't happen, I'm still really hot on Newcastle. I was very confident about them in my pre-season predictions as well. Some people had them dropping right down 10th, 11th. Not with this coach. I'm telling you, Eddie Howe, he is special. Let's go to the big game then. United versus Arsenal. That's what everybody's talking about. And we'll start with Arsenal. We will do a United learning in a little bit. But I think we should talk about Arsenal's defensive ability and how strong that backline can be, even in the face of big pressure. Because it wasn't pretty yesterday from Arsenal. They didn't play well. I don't think they transitioned well. In fact, I think the counter-attacks were poor at times. United did give them opportunities to break, and we just didn't see enough threat from them on transition. The final ball was poor. The running power in behind wasn't quite there. It didn't work in transition yesterday. And no doubt Mikel Arteta will want way more control in games than we saw yesterday. It was probably the least I can remember Arsenal controlling a game against United in quite some time. But nevertheless, when you haven't got control of a game and you're not playing well, you've got to do the dirty stuff well. You've got to have a goalkeeper who can bail you out, and David Raya is exactly that. 2 or 3 absolutely fantastic saves. The one lower left from Cunha is just remarkable. To go with his hand rather than his foot there, still have the wrist power to turn it round for a corner. Amazing. You know, the pressure under his own bar, brilliant. So having a goalkeeper who can bail you out is key, and having set pieces that are elite are crucial. And that's exactly what Arsenal have. You know, since they've got Nicolas Jova, and I don't want to bang on about Nicolas Jova too much because he is sort of meme online, no team has scored more set-piece goals than them in the Premier League. They've scored 71 set-piece goals. That's 10 more than any other side. And I think they're particularly dangerous from corners. the in-swing delivery they have from Rice and Saka is just a constant threat. They've scored 31 goals from corners since 23-24. Nobody's even close to that, by the way. Liverpool are second in the corner scoring set piece table. They've put up 20. So Arsenal are far and away the best corner takers in the league. And it was a huge problem for United yesterday. It felt like the only way Arsenal were really going to score. And they punished United. And when you're not playing well, and, you know, as a team, you're having to grind it out physically, the fact that you can rely on set-piece delivery, corner delivery like that, it is just such an asset, such a string to your bow. Let's talk about Victor Gyökeres, because obviously he's been memed online heavily, hasn't he, for his performance, that I didn't think was that bad. You know, he was in a constant battle with Matthias de Ligt, who is incredibly physical himself, and occasionally he won it, occasionally he lost it. He showed a real unselfishness to run the lines. Yes, it didn't feel like he was quite up to speed physically, but he joined Arsenal's pre-season tour late as well. I still think there's plenty of good stuff in Victor Gyökeres' game, and goals will come, especially against the lower level sides in the Premier League, because he does find interesting spaces inside the box. Not that we saw that yesterday. People seem to have got into this sort of social media headspace of needing immediacy in signings, giving them no time to settle in, saying that they have to score straight away, like they have to be immediately amazing and fit into the team now. Give some players some time, can we? You know, Victor Gyökeres is joining a brand new league that he's barely ever played in, a brand new team, a brand new unit, a brand new tactical system. You know, let's give the guy a little bit of time to function in this Arsenal unit. I think he was absolutely fine, and this is one of the benefits Arsenal have of having Kai Havertz in the team as well. If Victor Gyökeres isn't playing well, Kai Havertz is an excellent backup. You know, there might be times this season where we see Kai Havertz start games because he adds a different dimension to that Arsenal attack. I wouldn't be worried about Gyökeres after that 90. Let's talk Manchester United as well, because there were certainly some positives to the game, and I think one thing we definitely learned is that is an improved level of physicality in this team. And I'm not just talking about Mbeumo and Cunha, who we'll speak about later in forward areas. Defensively, it looked totally different. From a tactical viewpoint, the jumping of the backline was night and day from last year. Dorgu and Dalot in the wing-back positions, way higher, way wider. But Shaw and Yoro, and even to Lig's willingness to jump out the line, win balls in that middle third, be super aggressive against the number 10s and the wingers, is just not been seen last season. We didn't see that at all last season from the centre-backs. And what it allowed United to do was maintain pressure way higher up the pitch. It meant that the gap between the defensive line and the forward line was a quarter of the size we saw last season. It meant there was way less pressure on Casemiro and Bruno physically to cover big distances. And it looked much better. It looked much more physically accomplished. And I think what it also allowed United to do was control the game. It was one of the rare occasions. I can't remember a time in recent seasons where United have controlled the game like they did yesterday against a fellow Big Six side. Usually, even when United have won games against Big Six teams, it's counter-attacking, the opposition have got 70-80% of the ball. United look like their only goal threat is going to come on counter-attacking situations where they've had 30% of the ball, somebody's going to produce a moment of genius. Yesterday, you know, concerted pressure, lots of possession, 22 shots, a couple of really good chances. I think the Mbeumo header was a great chance in the second half. Cunha looked amazing. His ball carrying ability is just so frightening, and it adds a massive string to United's bow. Overall, I was really impressed by United, even though they lost the game. And maybe I was most impressed with Luke Shaw. Really proved to me that if, and it is obviously a huge if he's available, United do have a player there on the left side in that left centre-back role that is just sensational when he's fit. On the ball, he's so calm and composed. His first touch is excellent. He's really underrated in the air. But it's that ability, like I spoke about earlier, that ability and aggression to jump out the line and engage midfielders, engage forwards in really high areas of the pitch that is crucial. When you don't have that and players sit off and you allow the midfielder or the forward to turn and run, that United will just get constantly exposed playing this formation. In transition, it will look ugly. But Shaw and Yoro were brilliant at that yesterday. So lots of positives. Still do feel the goalkeeping issue is going to cost United. I think it will just be a problem. It will be a continued narrative throughout the season because, yes, Onana is still to come back, but I think he needs more pressure on him than Bayandir can potentially provide. Now, I'm not really sure who that is. The market feels quite tight. Senna Lamens has been heavily linked. Emi Martinez was being linked at the start of the window. Could he be the answer? Obviously, there is Donnarumma on the market, but I just don't see United going in for him, especially as Manchester City seem like they're closing in on a deal. That is a problem for United, isn't that goalkeeping position? And it just feels like the narrative will dog the team, who are clearly going to make some strides forward this season, having playing only one game per week. Tactically, they look better. Ball progression looked better. The forward line looked good. But the goalkeeping narrative needs to change. Should we talk about West Ham? I think we should talk about West Ham as well, because that was worrying. That was really worrying. People will point to the fact that United lost, West Ham lost, Ruben Amorim, Graham Potter, similar win rates, similar narratives. But I don't see it. I think Ruben Amorim proved yesterday his tactical system can work. There were lots of positives to take, and that the additions he's been given are going to improve the team. I think you look at Graham Potter's start, the additions aren't there. There weren't a lot of positives. The tactics didn't feel like they'd shifted and altered over pre-season. When you look at last season, West Ham won 10 Premier League games, 5 under Julian Lopetegui in 20 games, 5 in 18 under Graham Potter. Low levels, and the biggest worry really is that the 11 hasn't changed that much. The midfield hasn't really changed. In fact, it's got weaker without Kudus. The forward line definitely lacks pace. It definitely lacks pace. There's too much of a reliance on Jarrod Bowen to do everything in that forward line. And I think against Sunderland, he still looks like the best player on the pitch. He still has moments where he's just remarkable. I love Jarrod Bowen, but he needs some support. The team as a unit put up 0.5 expected goals, and there was just a failure to do the basics. As Graham Potter said afterwards, that's what cost them, this failure to do the simple. I mean, the Mayenda header, he's 5'11". This is not Benjamin Sesko, 6'5", Erling Haaland, 6'5", Zlatan, 6'5", leaping to win headers. This is a 5'11" Mayenda against 6'4" Kilman, 6'3" Naefa Gerd. It's too easy. Way too easy. And I understand, Sunderland and the Stadium Light, it's going to be a difficult place to go this season. It is going to be rocking there. It's going to be one of the best atmospheres in the league every game. I look back at Fulcrew's comments last season after that 90th minute equaliser from Southampton, where he had that sort of rant and it didn't go down well in the changing rooms, and he talked about the fact that we just sink. And it felt like the same narrative happened here. I think mentally there was a bit of a disconnect at West Ham. When that Sunderland goal went in, it was... everybody just sunk. It didn't feel like the mentality was there to get that game back, get it by the scruff of the neck again, control the game again, create more chances, and push Sunderland onto the back foot. From there, Sunderland grew into the game, and it never felt like West Ham really were going to get back into it. To ship 3 opening day away at Sunderland, I think that is a real worry. 43 points they put up last season. 13 of those, by the way, came against the newly promoted side, or 3 relegated sides. So, 30 points against the rest of the Premier League. Man United's points tally was really bad. West Ham's was really bad. But the additions this summer, I just don't think they've been there. West Ham fans are rightly raging. They need some support from the board. Last couple of learnings then. We'll start with Chris Wood. Still got it. Chris Wood has still got it. I think there was a bit of a narrative developing coming into this season that, Chris Wood, was it a flash in the pan? Can he do it again? 20 goals last season, but we don't see him doing that again, do we? We do. I don't think it'll be 20, but his movement is so good. Have a look at the second goal they score, yeah. I mean, obviously the pass from Elliot Anderson, who is going to be one of the best midfielders in the league this season, by the way. We talk about Adam Wharton and all these players having huge breakthrough campaigns. Elliot Anderson will be in that England squad for the World Cup in 2026. He is insanely good. The pass, the first time pass to Chris Wood, sickening. But the movement from Chris Wood is running before the ball falls to Elliot Anderson. Go and watch it if you haven't already. But it must be, a link and a connection that they've had on the training ground, because he knows that ball is coming through to him. The finish is brilliant. The finish in the first one is excellent. I just think that Chris Wood, even though he is into his senior years, his movement inside the box and his positional sense of where to be, where he needs to be, means he will score 15 goals this season if he's fit enough. You know, only Mo Salah has scored more non-penalty goals in the Premier League since Nuno took over. And that was in 2023, I think. He scored 29 non-penalty goals in that time. Mo Salah scored 30. And I think it has been a bit of a remarkable week for Forest, because coming into this week, there was a bit of negativity. You know, Nuno was very critical in that interview with Sky Sports. He was very critical. We're very, very, very far away, he said. We're very worried about this season starting. Well, since then, they spent £90 million. You know, that interview seems to have held a lot of weight at Forest. And the business they've done in attacking areas, yes, it's expensive, but it is quite exciting. If you took the transfer fee away from Amari Hutchinson, you'd say that's a really exciting move. Same with James McAtee. I think McAtee at £30 million, keep an eye on that one. He will be really dangerous playing alongside Morgan Gibbs-White. Douglas Luiz looks like he's close to joining as well. Some defensive midfield experience in the Premier League. Yeah, Forest, again, people had them sort of finishing 14th, 15th. I saw some people talking about Forest finishing 17th in their predictions. Based on what? The team is so settled. It finished and was very close to finishing the Champions League places last year. It's so settled. They've lost one player, it's Elanga. They replaced him with Ndoye, who scored an amazing header, by the way, on the weekend. The rest of the team's the same. The back four is the same. They've still got Mario Milenkovic. The midfield is a year further on in their adaptation. You know, Elliot Anderson is a year further on, is improvement. They're settled. They're going to be a constant problem. I think the final thing we learned is that this next 2 weeks of the window are going to be absolutely massive for some teams. A lot of teams felt like they needed serious business. You know, I've spoken about West Ham already. It feels to me like they're urgently in need of assistance. Brentford, urgently in need of assistance over this next couple of weeks. Manchester United need a goalkeeper. Chelsea definitely need a centre-back. They do. Liverpool, as mad as this is to say, definitely need more midfielders through the door. I think Arsenal still need a left winger. Newcastle need Johan Visser. There's so much work to be done in this next 2 weeks of the window, and there's already so much money been spent. This next 2 weeks is going to be huge. I honestly think it's going to be massive. All right, that was a bit of a rambly discussion about the weekend's football. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought of the format in the comments below. If you did enjoy it, hit the like button, hit subscribe. I'll see you later. Goodbye.